I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest, who is going to be talking to us about style authenticity and how it ties into confidence. This person is actually the reason I turned into the girl with the golden kettlebells on Instagram. And I'm so excited to introduce her to all of the listeners. Welcome, Kate Obert. Welcome to the Dangerous Women podcast, where the intersection of fierceness and femininity fuels empowerment. Our goal is to provide women with insights to unleash their power. Grounded in the 7 principles of self-confidence, we guide women to embrace their duality, delicate as a flower, yet powerful as a bomb. I'm your host, Colleen Conlon, inviting you to join me as we explore topics on health and wellness, empowering you to embody the essence of your dangerous woman. So, who are you and what do you do?
Well, I'm Kate Obert. I am a stylist and a brand consultant. So my role is to essentially help people match their external image to their internal essence. So how they feel on the inside, we want to make sure everything is congruent from their digital presence, their website, their social, how they show up on Google, like if you Google yourself, all the way to your fashion, how you present yourself in person. And that's not just for business events or podcast recordings, but it's also vacation and in real life, because the nature of our businesses and our world is that you never know who you're going to meet when. And so you could be on vacation, having a cocktail at the bar and just meet your next client. So always representing who you are and making sure there's like a congruency between everything.
And Kate, how would you define the word authenticity in regards to this topic?
I mean, the easy answer is just being yourself, right? But I think for me, especially when it comes to branding, because what I get a lot is, well, I don't want to like curate this image because then it's going to be like a false image and things like that. But when it comes to branding, it's being strategic about who you are. So you don't have to put all your family life and your personal life and everything online if you don't want to. Is that a strategy? Yeah. But being authentic is being really intentional about what it is that you want people to know about you and how that's going to help them.
And then for anybody who's listening to this who, they might not have a job where it's about the brand, could this stuff still be related to somebody who's like, I'm trying to attract a partner, or I just moved to a new place
Yeah.
and I'm trying to attract new friends, or doing this stuff for the sake of gaining new social relationships?
Oh, yeah, because like attracts like, vibe attracts vibe. So when you're clear on who you are and your essence and what energy that you want to put out there, you're going to attract that. That's why the quote, be the energy you want to attract. So, yes, you can be strategic with it from like a business sense, but you can also use the exact same fundamentals and frameworks and processes and everything for just getting clear on who you are. Because I found for myself is as soon as I got the awareness of what my style is, what my identity is, who I am and who I'm wanting to become, then everything else kind of falls in line and it's congruent. And then I feel congruent. I feel cohesive. I feel like there's a flow, and it's all energy. So when you feel like yourself and when you feel like a fucking vibe, then that energy and that confidence is what other people are attracted to. And I mean, I'm sure you've walked into a room before and you can kind of scan and be like, oh, that person's like the confident one. And
Yeah.
it's just, they have this presence about them. And that to me, okay, when you're giving the example of attracting a partner or friends, at least for me, like I want to be friends with people like that. And people who know who they are, who are confident, who don't get swayed by trends, and they just like know who they are at the end of the day. So absolutely, this is, I mean, it's a holistic thing.
And then like how do we do this? Especially for somebody who might
Yeah.
be like, I'm finally at this point in my life. I understand who I am, or we're all always ever evolving. So maybe it's like I know who I am now, I know what my style is now, but I might not know what it is like 10 years from now. Like how do we go about figuring out what our authentic style is?
So that's a great question. And you nailed it when you're saying it's evolving. So what I find that is a danger zone, let's say when you're talking about branding someone for a business, is that like AKA you're selling yourself, is the fact that they still haven't done the identity work. So then what they'll do is they'll go to a graphic designer and a web designer and they will tell them what they want. But what happens when you don't really know what you want? What happens when you don't really know how to convey your style? Because that's where I see the biggest disconnect is there's two things. Either you don't know who you are at all, and then you're trying to just like go on Pinterest and like get inspo from other people and be like, okay, I like this and this and this, put it all together. And the web designer's like, okay, but there's no soul, there's no essence. So then when you get it back, you're like, well, this doesn't feel like me. This doesn't, but you spent all that money and you're like, well, got to keep it now. Or it's like you evolve, but again, you spent all the money and you're like, well, I've already built brand recognition, so I can't evolve. So you get stuck. So the key part is always understand, like figuring out and understanding your identity. Because once you do that once, you learn how to do that over and over. So you're like naturally auditing yourself and your brand. And it does take, I mean, just like anything, it's a skill. It takes a little bit of time to understand how to do that. But the number one thing that I say is the brand identity is just going through like like answering the question, who am I? And it's who you are now, what you really love to do, what your passion is, what your expertise is, but also who is the next level self concept of yourself. And then your brand is to marry the two, because what you're doing is you're projecting your next level self concept out there. So other people, like the right people, are attracted to you to help you step into that self concept.
Can we do like an example of maybe a couple
Yeah.
different people who might be like, I don't really know what my style is. I don't even know if I fully know who I am. Like, what are some of the questions you might ask to somebody who's trying to figure this piece out for the first time?
Yeah. So I have an exercise called the image challenge. And basically, and this is, mind you, this is everything I did to figure out my style. So way back when I was trying to like figure out my thought on loop, on repeat in my head was, I have so much energy, I just have no clue where to channel it. And I was like, I know I am meant to do something. I know I want to do something, but everyone else seems to be, it seems to be so easy to just make money being themselves online. And it's like, and what was really hard for me is with my identity, I was always the stylish person. I was always a fashion person, but I was like, but I can't seem to figure out my own. I knew what looked good, but I didn't know what felt good for me.
Mm.
And that made the biggest difference. So what I did is I first just wrote down everything. Like I had three different columns. I had, here are my strengths, here are my weaknesses, here are my unique ability. And so what I would do is I wrote them down for myself, but I actually asked like 10 of my friends and family. I was like, can you give me like three answers for each of these things? And most people aren't going to give you your weaknesses, but so they'll skip over that. But you'll get enough data from that and maybe even ask more. And once you get their answers, put them all in the columns. And then, now with our best friend ChatGPT, it's going to be so much easier for you. You can just say like, hey, here are the answers for strengths, weaknesses, unique ability, and just like, organize them, take out the repeats. You could do that. But I mean, I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that is an exercise that you should probably do on your own with that. But either way, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the result of being able to see, okay, here are what everyone else sees as my strengths here, and especially your unique ability. Because what I didn't see is that the things that came easy to me were the things that other people had no idea how to do. Because I thought styling came easy to everybody. Everyone has the eye. Everyone has this. No, not at all. Very small percentage of people. So that's something that started illuminating. I was like, okay, this is what I'm good at. This is what, started doing that. And then, so that's more of like the identity part. And obviously there are lots of other exercises we can talk about if you want to dive deeper. But for brevity of the conversation, the other part, so there's the identity and then there's the visual aesthetic. So the visual aesthetic is not just choosing your favorite color. The visual aesthetic is to represent and translate the identity. So what I would do, and this is still to this day what I do with all of my clients when we first start, is I tell them, I was like, all right, you're going to go, well, first of all, you're going to do a social detox. This is what I love first, because most of the time people are really stuck in their head, and they also are getting inspiration from other people. And I put that in quotations because usually it's not inspiration, it's comparison. So what they're looking at, and there's a very fine line between the two. And how you get to inspo versus comparison is by knowing yourself and knowing your style, because then you've created a filter. Once you know your style, you've created your filter where then you can look at someone else's stuff and be like, okay, I like this, this, and this. I'm going to discard this. You feel more confident in your decisions to not get caught up in, that you don't know. Okay. So anyways, getting to the aesthetic part, do the social detox, mute and unfollow anyone that puts you in lack. So this is like gifting your future self. So then after you do that, get off the social for at least 24 hours. I like to say do it for like a weekend. And then you're going to go into Pinterest, create a new board, keep it secret if you like, just label it brand vibes. And you're going to go through, just go on the homepage and just go down the rabbit hole. So if you're not familiar what I mean, or if you're not familiar with Pinterest to know what I mean by that, it's you are just scrolling. This is where scrolling is a good thing. But just scroll and scroll and scroll and do that for like a minimum of 45 minutes to an hour. And I use that timing because I find, and this is myself included, I find that it takes about like 20 minutes to kind of like get all the kinks out and you to really be present with yourself. So you're going to scroll down and just anything that you resonate with, you're going to put in that board. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be quotes, colors, textures, vacation spots, outfits, food. It does not matter, and don't judge it and don't try to make sense of it. So then after that, you're going to dump everything in that board, and then you're just going to leave it, because you need to kind of like let your brain do its own thing and just sit with it. Then the next day, come back to it. And if you want to, the rest of the day, like you find things, put it in there, but just don't look at the board yet. So then go back the next day and then open up the board and delete anything that no longer resonates with you. So during the rabbit trail, you might like find things and be just like in a vibe and just like, you look at it later and it's not really it. So delete it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that board the day after, maybe even the day after that, is just refined and refined. And you're like, this is me. I don't know how to understand it. You don't need to. That's fine. Because a lot of it too, like I said, it's a practice. And you have to allow yourself to just sit with it, and your brain is going to do its job. So then from there, that's usually when my clients are giving that to me and I'm the translator. I'm like looking through there and I'm able to see, okay, what I'm looking for and what you can look for yours is, are there any themes of colors that you keep seeing popping up? Are there patterns? Are there any type of like different styles and clothing that comes up, whether it's maybe a, what's the word, not genre, the like 70s, 60s decade. So maybe it's like a decade that keeps popping up or something like that. You're going to start seeing themes. So for example, something that I saw one time with one of my clients is that there were there's so many photos of expansion, like really vast desert or high ceilings or really long staircases or something like that. And you're going to start seeing these things, and that might not mean a lot to you at first, but then once I've seen so many things and how they connect, because then I'll end up doing the full brand identity work. And I'm like, it makes so much sense. When you do gravitate to things like that, they are in a period of expansion. And sometimes that word can be very buzzword in our industry because expansion is everyone's word of the year. But really taking time to think about like, what does that mean for you? Because we're not always supposed to be in that expansion mode.
Does that mean like I'm wearing like a long pant? Like that's the first place that my head goes to. Expansion.
It could be. It could be. So that's the thing. And this is all up to interpretation, where you do want to have the marriage of the full brand identity work with the styling part.
Mm.
So that's something that it might just illuminate for you over time. Maybe at first you're just saying like, oh, I just love like long palazzo pants. That's kind of my vibe. Okay, cool. But maybe that's where you're at now. And 6 months from now, as you start to see and as you start to learn more, you start connecting more of the inner essence to the external image. And you're like, oh, I think I like this because it reminds me subconsciously, it reminds me of this. And a lot of it too is it's kind of what you assign to the item.
Hmm.
So it can be a little bit different per person. So for you, those palazzo pants could equate expansion for you. To someone else, it might not. But it's kind of, I kind of look at it like crystals. You know,
This
crystals
is so
have
cool.
their
Wait, so
crystals have, yeah, keep
no,
going.
okay. Go on with the crystals, and then I have to ask you something.
Okay. Crystals have their own properties. Crystals have their, like, they emit, rose quartz is love and blah, blah. So, depending on where you are on the spectrum of what you believe about crystals and whatever, let's just say for this conversation, you know, you don't know, like, it's more about the intention where, like, mind body connection, mind body spirit. So, I know that having a rose quartz there, or I think having a rose quartz is going to attract more love into my life. Okay, so you have that mind body connection. So it's more about your mindset and your belief about things, because your belief is what is driving your life. So if you believe that for you, these pants are an expression of your identity and like the expansion with that, then that's what it is. That makes
Okay,
sense?
it does make sense. What
Okay.
could it mean if I'm just like noticing on my Pinterest board, I'm just like saving like all of the sourdough bread?
I love that. I mean, that could mean, I mean, it's kind of hard to tell when there's like no other information that I have to like kind of bring everything together. But I mean, just generally speaking, think of it like sourdough bread, making that, homemaking, staying home, being in a comfort, like in a comfort zone, not in a negative way, but just like I said, sometimes we're in a mode of expansion. Some days we're not. Some days we want to be in more of our core zone. And so I see this happen with style. So we figure out what our core style is. So for example, for me, I'm very like moody tropical. Like I love like the neutrals, and it's darker, and it's the darker palm leaves and the gold pops of citrus colors like orange and yellow. That is like my core that makes me feel the most me.
Mm,
Okay. But it doesn't mean that I won't like come out of that and be like, okay, so now that I know my style, and this whole process is what I did to figure out mine. Like I felt like you'll know, sometimes it's kind of hard to like, you'll know when it's your style because it like gives you a visceral feeling. Like you can't get away, like you can't not understand that. Like when you feel it, you feel it.
I
And
get that.
so
And I really get that. Kate actually helped me get a pair of shoes for an event last year. And they've turned into like my ruby slippers. They're these
I love that.
rhinestone Betsy Johnson gold sneakers. And every time I put them on, I literally like start giggling like like a schoolgirl because I just feel so like so in my element.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. And so something like that, like the juxtaposition of having casual and glam, casual sneakers, but glammed with the crystals, that says something about you. That's part of your style. And so that's where you have to, once you like really understand what your core style is, then I say if you've created a filter, so that becomes your filter in which you look at everything through. So for example, I remember like 2 years ago, I was like feeling really into like this vibrant, really vibrant hot pink. And I started using it, and there was a little part of my brain where it's like, oh, but that's not like part of my brand. Like, how do I do it? But then I knew, I was like, that is why I need to do it. So I, put it through my filter, if you will. I looked at it, I was like, what, like, how do I make this me? And it was the very specific shade of the vibrant neon hot pink. It that aligns the most with me. It's how I used it. When I used it, it was juxtaposed with something else that was maybe more traditionally on brand for me. And so then I remember like posting about it more, and it was like that, and I was like into this red and like whatever. And I had people message me and be like, I never, like, that's so not on brand for you. And I was like, no, it is, because it's being on brand isn't about being stuck in a color palette. Being on brand is the vibe that you create. So the vibe and the way that in which I use that specific pink color was very me. It was this, I used it in a more edgier sense than being like princessy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So then I started, so basically I ran it through my filter, if you will. And I was like, all right, well, how do I make this me? And I noticed that at periods of like my business and life, when I need to feel more grounded, more calm, I come very much back to my core style, where you'll see me wearing those type of colors. And then when I feel like like I want to put myself out there more, I want to be more, have more exposure, more expansive, then I start like playing around with like different trends, but I bring them back to me.
What would life be like if you could get that toned look? You could have physical superhuman strength by training with just 2 kettlebells at home. What would happen if you were on a program that strengthens self-awareness and courage so that you can develop a deeper connection and trust to self? What about this? What if you could be in a community with other women where you are encouraged to be assertive and resilient to build mental and physical strength? If you're waiting to hear what the offer is, this is it. Swing to Snatch, a 13-week kettlebell intensive, is my signature course that empowers women to get started with kettlebells. Work with me live in a virtual container guaranteed to grant you kettlebell queen status. To learn more, visit www.colleenconlon.com. That is so cool. Like you had said this is like such a cute little like catch line of my external needs to match my internal if I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to show up authentically as myself. And we want to do that
Yeah.
because when we show up authentically, there's this confidence that comes about. And the way you are able to describe all of this, I find so fascinating because I have never thought about clothing or style or anything like this the way I have since meeting you. And I remember the first time I met you, everything was around building out a brand for the online space for my kettlebell business. And I've learned, how powerful that is in regards to work. But I'm also at this point now where I just like hear you in my head based on, how I want to show up for date night or how I want to go out with my girlfriends. And I really do feel so different when I'm intentional about what I'm putting on. And, you know, I don't, and I'm curious to kind of like get your take. Maybe this is a whole other episode in terms of, it doesn't necessarily need to be the most expensive thing. It just needs to be something that resonates with you, that allows you to pop out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny that you bring up the money part of it, the designer part of it, because that's actually something I was writing a post about it this morning, actually. And I was toying around with the title being something about like, well, do you actually know why you're buying the designer bag? Like most people don't know why. They just think that, and don't get me wrong, I love a good designer bag. The quality is exponentially better usually. And but the problem that I have with designer is I've had so many clients come to me, and that was kind of their thing. And like when they would buy something, it would be, it's going to be the designer bag, it's going to be the designer shoe, it's going to be this, but it didn't do anything for them.
Mm.
Because most of the time is you're going to see when the average person gets the designer item, it means everyone has the designer item. Because if the average person is already thinking that that's what they should get, then that mean and they're and I what I mean by average person is someone who is not very in tune with the fashion community. So if they're the ones that are getting this like classic YSL bag or Chanel bag or whatever it would be, then it's already so much of a trend, or it's just a status symbol for them, which also is not a bad thing. There are ways, and that's where this is where we can get deeper another time, but the strategy of style and how you're using that to tell a specific story. So yes, sometimes that is the move, but I will tell you that like the status symbol for the bag isn't that important. And what is more important is finding the thing that makes you feel the most you, that your identity is expressed. So, to give you an example, and also before that, when you go to different business events or just in general, for me, I'll speak personally, I love meeting people. And so I use my style as a strategy tool. And it is a nice thing in my case where I'm a walking billboard for what I do. So there's that. But even if you're not a stylist, and it's still, and put aside the fact that, yes, what you wear is going to change your energy and your confidence and how you show up. Of course, we know that, check off, we got that. Now, the next thing is how do you evoke conversation with someone? How do you open the door? Because these days, it's a lot harder to strike up a conversation with a stranger. It doesn't happen that often because people are so in their space. So I look at it as a strategy of personal and business. I want to meet people because I love making friends, but I also like have a business to run and I want to help more people with exactly what we're talking about. So how do I do that? So I choose items that reflect my personality, but are the things that will evoke conversation. They will probably get some type of compliment. And it's not about compliment in terms of validation. It's about, let me draw someone in. Because here's the thing, if I'm drawing them in based off of something that I'm wearing, whether it is a clutch, whether it's my outfit, jewelry, whatever, I have already like audited that they are confident enough to come up to a stranger, me, and compliment my bag. And so then we get talking, and fashion's like the weather. It's the easiest icebreaker. So you get someone in your aura and someone is talking to you and it's like, oh my gosh, I love your bag. This is cool. Oh my gosh, yeah, I got it from here. So cute, blah, 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 blah. And like you have this, you break the ice. And then from there, most people will just like naturally keep talking. Or you can, this is where the vibe check comes in, because you're going to be like, all right, how did they respond? How was this interaction? How am I feeling about this interaction? And if it's a vibe, you're like, all right, let's keep talking. And then you just get, what do you do? Oh, I do this. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. What do you do? I'm a stylist. Oh yeah, that makes sense. And for me, most people will not search on Google for a stylist. Like stylist is a lot of times, it depends on where I'm at, but I'll lead with stylist or brand consultant. Depends on the situation. But with styling, it's the low hanging fruit. It's the easiest thing that someone can get the transformation and see how much it affects their life. And then we kind of move on with the branding, because most people don't want to put themselves out there, brand, if they don't look good, style. So yeah, so what I do is I will strategically find something. So one time I went out and I had a clutch from Amazon. Actually, it's this cute acrylic clutch and it had like an evil eye on it and it was amazing. And I got so many compliments, and that one of the people who came up to me because of that, she ended up being a client.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen with just a YSL bag that everyone has. Like,
yeah.
Does that reflect who you are? Does it show part of your personality? When you can show your personality, you break the ice with your vibe of person. So that's where the strategy of the style comes in, where it's like, okay, why don't you take that? Why don't you just find something that you feel the most aligned with, that is fun, where like your shoes, you look down, you're like, oh my gosh, these are amazing. I look awesome. That's the energy that you want. And if that bag does that for you, awesome. But if it doesn't, then start rethinking how you are piecing together your looks.
That is just so cool. I love that you say this. I can relate to this so much. This past year, I have been very intentional about my shoes in particular. So
Love that.
I have like three different pairs of shoes that you are not just going to find anywhere. And they're all like regular shoes. Like I'll go to the grocery store, I'll go to the doctor, I'll go anywhere, I'll go out in these shoes. And they always start a conversation. And they start a conversation with like the person doing, like checking out my groceries at the grocery store. I've had men compliment them when I go out with my husband. I have women making conversation with me if we're just like walking down the
Love
street.
that.
And it's so interesting because I never, like, I'm choosing to wear these shoes because they're just really fun for me and I'm having a ball in them. But then they're starting these conversations with other people that, you know, as I've been playing with it, I haven't been thinking about like, oh, I want to start a I'm like trying to get anybody else to start a conversation with me. But seeing that it happens, I can attest to it. This
Mm-hmm.
works. And, you know, for anybody who's listening to this, more so, less on the business side, more on the personal side, once somebody starts the conversation with you based on what you are wearing, then you get the power to decide, do I want to pursue this? Or am I not really into it? I kind of see it
Yeah.
as
It's a
yeah,
vibe
as
check.
it's a vibe check and it's a power
Yeah.
move, which is so cool.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And now you'll start to see now that you have that awareness. And again, like I said, this is a practice, it comes over time. So now that you have seen that, you can start being more strategic about it. It's just the same thing how I use silent ambassadors in your brand. It's not something that you are randomly choosing to be a part of your brand. But once you start getting like feedback from it and people saying, oh my gosh, I thought of you, and sending you, like for me, sending me a bunch of palm tree stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, I do have them everywhere. They're in my house. I live in California. And they like make, there's the deeper meaning of like what they mean to me. And it's like, oh, okay. Now I use them strategically in my brand because I want people to look at, see a palm tree and think of me. I don't care if they're on vacation. I don't care if they see it on the internet. I want my name to be top of mind because a successful brand is how often are you top of mind? So just like the silent ambassador in your brand, it's the same thing where like your shoes could become one of your silent ambassadors where like people see a sparkly tennis shoe and like, oh, that's Colleen. So you can start being strategic with how you cross them over.
okay, so this is going to take a slight pivot. And this
Love a good
podcast
plot twist.
is really all about becoming the most confident version of yourself. And like, what do you say to somebody who's like, I love everything I'm hearing. I want to do this. I want to, you know, get that clutch. I want the shoes. I want to use these things to feel like a vibe and attract other people to me based on what it is I'm trying to attract. But I'm scared to show up as myself. I'm scared to show up as my authentic self. What do you say to those people?
Get the outfit. You're going to be a lot less scared if you look really fucking good. And knowing who you are and what your style is, yeah, that is the first thing. But you can first start by doing the Pinterest exercise and then go on your board and just replicate a outfit. You know, you're going to post something about fashion most likely. So then go in there and figure out which one makes you feel something, makes you feel like a little bit elevated, or maybe there's a little bit where like, oh, but I could never do that, whatever. That's the one. So, and play around with it. Buy it, get it, you know, make sure you got return policy is good. Buy it, get it, see yourself in the mirror, see what happens with it. If it's not the right one, send it back, try again. Like it's trial and error a lot of times. But when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you do good. And that's how you start putting yourself out there more. Is that's like a little hack that I use for people all the time. Because sometimes, or what I see that a lot of times people wait to get the outfit. They wait to do the styling. They wait to do all of these things because of something. I don't feel confident in myself yet. I haven't lost the weight yet. I'm in a transition phase, like
Kate,
all
is
of
that
these
like
things.
total bullshit? Is that
Yeah,
total bull?
100.
Okay.
It is, because you're not going to get that confidence if you don't look good. It's not superficial. It's not materialistic. It is a fact of life. If you look good, you feel good. Test the theory, test it and see what happens. But finding the right pieces for you is a trial and error, especially if you're doing it on your own without any other guidance. Because a lot of times when you get stuck in your head, like that's the danger zone, right? You just get stuck in your head and then you stay stagnant. Sometimes you need that outside accountability in that person to be like, okay, come on. But it really does. Well, one thing that I hear a lot is, because I do work with a lot of women who are moms, and they're like, well, I just, I'm still losing my weight. I'm still this, I'm still whatever. It's all around the image of they're not in the body that they are aspiring to be in. So they don't want to spend the money on the style aspect and buying the clothes and buying the things, because until they get there. But the problem with that is that you'll never get there if you don't help your brain along, because it's so much mental. So the hack is the fashion really helps your brain get there faster. And I'm sure, Colleen, you can speak a lot more to this, but there's, when you are wanting to get in the shape that you want to get in, the mindset part of it is so important, that like if you don't have that aligned, and if you're not nice to yourself, really, then you're not getting there, because so much of it is like this congruency with how you think about yourself, and then getting to the point where you like being grateful where you're at to get to where you want to go. So fashion is a huge hack for that. And I say, like, the style aspect of that, you have to start somewhere. And whether you're in this size or this size, it doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. As far as the shopping side of things, girl, there are tons of places to buy. I hesitate to use the word cheap, but like very inexpensive things that you can have. I call it like a transition phase. So you're going from where you are to where you want to be. So we're going to transition you, and we're not going to spend a lot of money on stuff. There are tons of amazing Amazon sets that are just chef's kiss. So that, get a couple of those, start feeling it. And also you can find things that will work for whatever size, like it'll work with you. Like certain fabrics will stretch, and it's amazing. Like there's this one jumpsuit I have from Norma Kamali. Actually, I have two of them, and I wore from my size now all the way to 9 months of pregnancy and back. Like it stretches and it's amazing. But there are things like that. It's like little tricks of the trade. But just the biggest thing is like, don't wait, because you'll just never get there.
So, Kate, is it possible for somebody to seek out someone like you to get this help?
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I do for people. So it is my unique value is the marriage between the brand and the style. But I definitely have clients that they are in corporate, they're not focusing on building their personal brand in the sense of needing the website up and the social and blah blah blah, but they just want they see the importance of the style alignment. So then we only do that. And so yeah, absolutely, this is exactly what I do, is helping people get out of their head and actually get this stuff done.
Well, I just think you're so fucking amazing, Kate. And
Thank you.
I don't think I realized that there were people like you out there. And I really am on board with what did you just say before? It was another one of those like cute little catchphrases. If I look good, I feel good, I do good.
Yeah.
And I think that's just a piece that everybody should jump on board with ASAP, especially because, to your point of, fashion being low hanging fruit, you can literally be totally different, like within a 24-hour period, right?
Oh, absolutely. Hmm.
Which, like in fitness, that definitely is not the case. We have to play the long
Hmm.
game before getting any type of instant gratification. And it seems like you actually can do that when it comes to fashion. So don't wait on
Oh, it's
this.
so fast. It's so fast. And that's why I say it's a low hanging fruit, because clients will come to me for the styling aspect, and then and like, okay, we'll answer all these questions. Because again, I can make you look good all day, but if you don't feel like yourself, it doesn't matter. You don't get the magic. The magic and the essence happens when you feel like yourself and you feel like what you're wearing is like your identity on the outside. That is something that it's more nuanced. That's the magic and the importance. And you can't just copy a Pinterest photo to get there if you haven't done the other stuff.
Ugh, I fucking love this, Kate. Okay, so if you're listening to this, you have homework.
Yeah.
Number one is get on Pinterest, start scrolling, do your detox, and really start figuring out who the fuck you are. And then number two is if I have no idea, I'm like totally lost in the sauce, just go hire Kate. Or maybe you just want to start with hiring Kate. Just go hire Kate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm totally, this is my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing to do is to help people feel like themselves. Because if you feel like yourself, all the other shit doesn't like affect you as much. Because if you're strong, you're confident, and you work with you for the strength of fitness, and then we got your external image with the fashion, like you're gonna be on fire.
Thank you so much for everything you had to share with us today. Kate has a couple of offers to share with you right now, so I'm going to let her take this away before we wrap it up.
So if you are interested in discovering your style, figuring that out for yourself, and also just want to see what I'm seeing trending for this year and how to incorporate that in your style, I have the free vibe guide, and the vibe guide is amazing. So I walk you through all of the trends that I'm seeing for this year and how to also incorporate them. And because it is a digital version, I give you all the links. So if you're familiar with my gift guide that I have every single Christmas, so from November to December, I have an incredible gift guide. So to make your shopping experience like so easy. So it's in that same vein. So everything has links, everything teaches you how to do it. My framework is in there for you to follow what we kind of talked about today. So that is at just kateobert.com/vibe-guide. And I'll give that to you, Colleen. And then, of course, if you want me to just help you do this, whether it's the style or the identity work and everything that we talked about today, I would love for, have a conversation. We can see where you're at, what support that you need, and we can go on and, create your brand identity development and your style alignment.
Thank you so much, Kate. And where can we find you online?
So kateobert.com, and that actually I'm currently redoing my website, so it's a coming soon page. However, that's where you can find the link to the vibe guide and my vibe check calls, which are my free consults. So if you're interested in working with me, go to my website. You'll still find the link there, or just Instagram. So instagram.com/kate.obert. Very easy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Dangerous Women podcast. If you had any groundbreaking takeaways from today's episode, please tag us on social at the Dangerous Women podcast. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe below.